There are days, perhaps more than we admit, when the world asks too much of us. Days when every minute feels borrowed, every conversation feels rushed, and even our thoughts seem to sprint ahead of us like impatient shadows. We move from one task to another, trying to keep up with the pace of everything around us, until suddenly we realize we haven't actually felt a single moment. It's as if time is sliding past us without ever touching us, without ever letting us rest inside it. But sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, a quiet room, a warm cup in your hands, the soft hum of night air, something inside pauses. Not dramatically, not loudly, just gently. And for a few seconds, you feel the weight of your shoulders ease, the noise in your mind soften, and the world slow down enough for you to breathe again. That soft pause, that tiny pocket of peace, is what tonight's story is about. A reminder that peace is stored in presence, not time. And the more we learn to notice these quiet moments, the more they gather inside us like something precious, like something saved. Welcome. Welcome to Sleepy Zen's story. Let the day loosen its grip. Let the night open its arms. Tonight, we wander into a gentle tale called The Jar of Quiet Moments, a story about slowing down, listening inward, and rediscovering the peace that was waiting for you all along. The story begins in a small wooden room, lit only by the faintest amber glow of a lamp, whose light swayed ever so slightly, as if breathing alongside the night. The walls were lined with simple shelves, and on the lowest one sat a jar, plain, unremarkable, and easy to overlook. The kind of jar you'd walk past without noticing unless you were moving slowly enough, gently enough, to see what others never did. The air inside the room felt warm and lived in, carrying the soft rustle of fabric, the quiet ticking of a clock with an old, patient heartbeat. Nothing hurried here. Nothing pushed or demanded or clung. It was a room built for one purpose: to let things settle. To let you settle. And as the night pressed its cool face against the window, the jar remained still, waiting for the moment its quiet purpose would be understood. In this gentle room lived a woman who did not collect objects, trophies, or memories shaped for display. Instead, she collected moments, tiny, unnoticed breaths of life that most people stepped over in their rush towards something else. She believed that every moment of peace, no matter how small, was worth keeping. Not to revisit, not to cling to, but to honor. She moved slowly, listened deeply, and lived with an awareness that made even simple things, the warmth of a cup, the exhale after a long day, the quiet between two thoughts, feel sacred. And each time she found a moment that made her shoulders relax, she would gently breathe it toward the jar, believing that peace, once noticed, never truly disappears. It just settles, like dust in a beam of light, waiting to be seen again. Tonight, as she lowered herself onto her small linen cushion, she closed her eyes and allowed her breath to lengthen into something slower, deeper, kinder. The room welcomed her calmness, as if recognizing her familiar ritual. The ticking clock softened its tone, almost out of respect for the quiet she was entering. And with her eyes closed, the woman felt her thoughts begin to drift. Not away, not forcefully, but naturally, like leaves carried by a gentle stream. She reached for that familiar warmth settling inside her chest and brought it forward with a quiet intention. Then she breathed it toward the jar. The glass shimmered faintly, as if the air inside had grown just a little warmer, just a little softer. The first quiet moment of the night had found its home. Though she had breathed countless peaceful moments into the jar over many nights, it never seemed full, and that puzzled some visitors who assumed the jar should overflow eventually. But she would simply smile and explain gently, "Quiet doesn't take up space the way noise does. Peace is light. Peace is soft. Peace settles gently, leaving room for more." She always believed that every human heart is like this jar, capable of holding far more calm than we ever assume, capable of storing softness without ever becoming crowded. And so, every night, she returned to her quiet ritual, trusting that the jar wasn't meant to fill up. It was meant to be a reminder, a companion to her stillness, a witness to her slowing down.
Tonight, however, something felt different. As the moon rose higher, spilling its pale light across the floor, the jar seemed to glow. Not visibly at first, not loudly, but softly, like the faint breath of a candle that refuses to disappear. The woman opened her eyes and tilted her head in curiosity. The glow wasn't coming from the lamp. It wasn't coming from the moon. It was coming from inside the jar. She leaned closer, not with urgency, but with the same gentle interest she brought to all quiet things. And for the first time, she wondered whether all these moments she had gathered, all these breaths of peace, had begun to weave themselves into something deeper than she had ever intended. As she sat quietly before the glowing jar, she noticed something unexpected inside it. Not light, not dust, not air, but a faint reflection of herself, softened and gentled by the jar's glow. Not her face as she often saw it in mirrors, busy, thoughtful, aging, alive, but a calmer version, stripped of tension, stripped of the self-critical lines she often carried. It was a reflection not of how she looked, but how she felt when she allowed herself to fully be present, a version of herself at peace. And she realized in that quiet moment that peace doesn't change who we are, it reveals who we've been beneath the noise. The jar wasn't reflecting her appearance, it was reflecting her essence. It wasn't long before someone knocked gently on her door. A traveler passing through the village, weary, restless, overwhelmed by a life lived at a pace too fast for comfort. His eyes carried fatigue, the kind that settles deep, the kind that follows you even when you close your eyes. She welcomed him in with a soft smile and warm tea, noticing the noise he carried inside him, the thoughts stacked like heavy stones, the tension clinging to his breath. She didn't ask him to explain anything, because she understood that explaining often deepens the noise instead of releasing it. Instead, she simply gestured to the cushion across from her and invited him into the room's gentle quiet. The traveler lowered himself onto the cushion slowly, as if afraid that sitting still might break something inside him. His breath was uneven at first, shallow, quick, protective, but in the gentle room, where nothing hurried and nothing demanded, he began to inhale more deeply. The woman sat opposite him, breathing softly, not instructing or demonstrating, simply letting her calm presence fill the space between them. And without realizing it, the traveler matched her rhythm, not perfectly, but enough for the room to feel different, enough for the jar to shimmer faintly at the edge of the room, as if recognizing the arrival of a new quiet moment waiting to be found. She eventually lifted the jar into her hands and placed it gently between them. The traveler looked at it with confusion, not understanding why a plain jar would matter. She explained softly, This jar holds quiet moments, not to keep them, but to remember them. Her voice was warm, steady, and simple, the kind of voice that made the world feel a little less crowded. She told him how the jar never filled, how peace didn't weigh anything, how presence didn't occupy space. The traveler listened, unsure whether he believed her, but deeply moved by the way she spoke, as if each word had been chosen with care, with patience, with sincerity. He reached out, hesitantly, placing his fingertips against the cool glass, and in that instant, he felt a small wave of calm ripple beneath his skin. The traveler breathed in slowly, letting the warmth of the tea settle inside him, letting the quiet of the room seep into the places where worry lived. He wasn't trying to offer anything to the jar. He didn't know how, but as he exhaled, something inside him softened, a tiny release of pressure he had been holding for too long. The jar glowed, faintly, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging this new moment of peace. He blinked, surprised, touched, unsure if he had imagined it, but she simply smiled. When we notice calm, even for one breath, it becomes part of us and part of this world. For the first time in a long time, the traveler felt a quiet truth settle inside him. Peace doesn't require perfection. It begins with a single gentle breath.
As the night deepened, the jar began to hold a soft warmth, one that radiated gently through the room. The warmth wasn't physical, not like a fire, not like sunlight. It was the warmth of presence itself. The warmth of two humans sitting without pretense or urgency. The warmth of honesty without words. The warmth of a moment shared without expectation. The traveler placed both hands around the jar now, and for the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something inside him unclench, something that had been holding on too tightly, something that had been waiting for exactly this kind of quiet. He didn't realize he had begun to cry until one tear slid gently down his cheek. Not a sob, not an unraveling, just one quiet tear, the kind that appears when the heart feels safe enough to release something old. He exhaled shakily, and the jar glowed again, brighter this time. It felt as if a small stone had been lifted from his chest, one of those burdens so familiar you forget you're carrying them. He watched the glow fade into a soft golden hue, settling into the jar like a whisper. He didn't apologize, he didn't explain, and she didn't ask. Peace doesn't require explanations. When he closed his eyes, he saw a memory he had forgotten, not because it hurt, but because he'd buried it under years of rushing. He saw himself as a child sitting beneath a tree, watching sunlight flicker through the leaves. He remembered the feeling of sitting still in that moment, the simplicity, the openness, the peace. The memory returned to him not as a sharp image, but as a feeling, a quiet he once knew and had forgotten how to find. He breathed toward the jar, and it welcomed the memory as gently as it welcomed everything else. Without asking, the woman placed a warm cloth over his hands, grounding him. She didn't need to know the details of his life or the reasons he carried so much noise inside him. She could feel it in the way he breathed, in the way he held his shoulders, in the way he hesitated before placing his palms on the jar. She whispered softly, "Quiet moments are not a cure. They are a beginning." And the traveler nodded, understanding, perhaps for the first time, that healing is not a single moment. It is a path made of many small breaths.
As they sat together, the jar's glow grew stronger, illuminating the room in a warm, amber hue. It cast soft shadows on the wooden walls, creating shapes that swayed like gentle memories. The light didn't flicker like a candle. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, steady, alive, calm. The traveler watched the glow deepen and felt the warmth settle into him, threading through his thoughts until they moved slower, softer, lighter. It was the first time in a long while that he felt connected to himself, to the moment, to the stillness around him. After a long stretch of shared silence, he finally whispered, "I didn't know how tired I was." The woman nodded. "Most people don't," she whispered back, "not until quiet shows them the truth." His words drifted gently into the room, and the jar glowed once more, as if holding the weight of his confession with tenderness. He felt a sense of relief simply from saying it, not in a dramatic way, not in a desperate way, but in the way truth often brings relief. Quiet, honest, cleansing.
When he looked into the jar again, he didn't see his tired reflection. Instead, he saw a version of himself he barely remembered, one who moved slowly, breathed easily, lived intentionally. It was not a fantasy or wishful projection. It was simply the possibility of who he could be when he lived from presence instead of pressure. The jar showed him not who he was forced to be, but who he truly was beneath the noise. A soft breeze drifted in through the window, carrying with it the cool fragrance of the night river. The curtains swayed gently, as though bowing in gratitude to the quiet moment unfolding in the room. The breeze touched his face, his hands, and the surface of the jar. It felt like a reminder that the world outside was still spacious, still steady, still open. Even when life felt overwhelming, the night remained patient, the world remained soft, the air remained kind. The traveler looked around the room and realized how carefully it had been shaped, not for decoration, but for comfort. The cushions were placed intentionally, the shelves arranged with mindfulness, the lamp glowing at a level that never overstimulated the senses. Everything here existed to support stillness. Nothing screamed for attention, nothing pushed him into thought. It was a sanctuary not because of its appearance, but because of how it felt. And for the first time in many whiles, he felt held by a space instead of lost in one. The woman placed her hand gently over the jar and spoke softly. "Whenever you feel overwhelmed, whenever the world becomes too loud, remember that peace is not gone. It's simply waiting for you to notice it again." She tapped the side of the jar lightly, and the glow shimmered like ripples across still water. The traveler understood. The jar wasn't magical. It wasn't special on its own. It was simply a reminder of what presence feels like, the way a mirror reflects a face but cannot create it. Peace lives inside us. The jar only helped him see it. She invited him to try again, to find a quiet moment within himself, even if it was small. He closed his eyes, inhaled slowly, and searched for something soft inside his chest. It took time, longer than he expected, but eventually he felt a tiny bloom of ease settle behind his ribs, a quiet loosening, a warm exhale. He breathed it toward the jar, and the glow pulsed in response. He opened his eyes, surprised at how simple it felt, how natural, how gentle. Saving a peaceful moment wasn't something he needed to force. It was something he needed to notice. He studied the jar again, noticing how light it felt, even though it held dozens of quiet moments. It didn't grow heavier with each breath of peace. It didn't strain under the weight of stillness. Because peace doesn't accumulate like burden. It lightens, it expands, it creates space rather than filling it. He realized then that he had been living in the opposite way, carrying noise as if it were precious, holding stress as if it defined him. But peace asked nothing of him except awareness, and in exchange, it freed him. Hours passed, yet the night did not feel long. Instead, it felt spacious, as if time had loosened its grip around them, softening into something more fluid, more forgiving. He felt as though the room existed outside the usual measurements of life, beyond minutes and obligations. The ticking clock no longer rushed him. It simply existed, steady and calm, marking moments rather than taking them. And for the first time in many nights, he felt no urgency to get anywhere else. He realized that he had been living at a pace that never matched his nature. He moved fast because others moved fast. He rushed because the world rushed. But here, in this quiet room, he discovered the pace that belonged to him, slower, gentler, more rooted. And he understood something quietly transformative. Peace isn't found in matching the world. It's found in returning to yourself. The woman placed the lid gently on the jar, sealing the night's quiet moments inside. She didn't do it to trap them, but to honor them, to acknowledge that tonight had offered something meaningful, something worth holding. She whispered, "Morning will come softly for you. You don't need to rush toward it. Let it find you when you wake." The traveler nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle into him like warm light. The night stretched quietly around you, holding its breath as though it too wanted to linger in this stillness a little longer. The jar rested beside you on the soft wooden floor, faintly illuminated by the dim glow seeping through the paper windows. It didn't shine, it didn't call, it simply existed, the way peaceful things do when they no longer need to impress, convince, or demand anything from the world. And as you watched it sit in its quiet, almost humble presence, you felt something shift inside you, something soft and strangely familiar. You realized that the jar wasn't special because of what it contained, but because of how it behaved. It asked for nothing. It tried to become nothing more than what it already was. It waited, without expectation, without impatience, without fear of being forgotten. And for the first time, you wondered what it would feel like to wait like that. To breathe without rushing, to exist without performing, to let your life unfold without forcing your hands into every corner. The simple jar beside you became a mirror for a truth you had always known but rarely practiced. Peace deepens when you stop trying to make every moment meaningful and instead allow meaning to rise on its own, quietly, like dawn through an open window. You closed your eyes, letting the dimness settle gently behind your eyelids. And in that private darkness, you noticed your breath, its slow rise, its soft release. For so long you had treated your breath like a tool, something to control, to shape, to push into patterns you believed would fix you, soothe you, guide you. But tonight, it moved with a confidence that didn't come from effort. It moved as if it had remembered itself. You felt your chest expand like a tide returning to familiar shores, not because you commanded it, but because that is what tides do. And in each exhale there was a loosening, a quiet surrender, a subtle untying of knots you didn't even know were there. Each breath was no longer something you did. It was something that happened, something that carried you, held you,
softened you. The jar beside you, silent and steady, seemed to echo this lesson. You don't have to shape every part of your life with your hands. Some things, especially the ones that matter most, are meant to unfold naturally, like the breath that found its own rhythm again. And as that rhythm settled deeper into your body, you felt yourself drifting further into the gentle belly of the night. Silence is never just one thing. Tonight you discovered it had layers, soft, shifting, delicate layers like sheets of thin silk resting over one another. At first, there was the surface quiet, the one anyone could hear, the subtle hum of night, the faint rustle of air moving past the wooden door. But then another layer opened beneath it, deeper and softer, the kind of quiet that feels like a cushion around the heart. It didn't ask you to listen closely. It didn't demand your focus. It simply waited for you to arrive. And as you eased into that deeper quiet, you sensed something even more profound beneath it. A silence that was not empty, but full of space, full of softness, full of the kind of understanding that doesn't need words. It felt like returning to a room you had forgotten existed inside you. A room where nothing has been damaged, nothing has been rushed, nothing has been hardened by the weight of unfinished tasks or tangled emotions. You rested there for a long moment, feeling the layers settle around you, one by one like blankets warming you from the inside. The jar did not move, it did not glow, but somehow its presence had guided you here, into a silence that felt less like an absence and more like a reunion.
The world has shaped you to believe that every moment must be productive, meaningful, or used wisely. But this moment didn't care for any of that. It didn't offer a lesson. It didn't contain a revelation. It didn't hold a hidden message waiting to be decoded. It simply existed and allowed you to exist with it. As you breathed into this simplicity, you realized how rare it was to encounter a moment that asked nothing from you. Not your strength, not your clarity, not your decisions, not even your understanding. It allowed you to be unpolished, unhurried, unfinished. And in that rare permission, your body softened, your shoulders lowered, and your heartbeat found a slow, steady rhythm. The jar remained by your side, steady as the night. It didn't look like much, just a small vessel holding quiet moments from long ago. But in its presence, you felt something you hadn't felt in a long time. The freedom to be exactly where you are, without shaping yourself into who you think you must become. This moment didn't need to be extraordinary. It only needed to be true. There is a kind of night that feels like a boundary closing behind you, separating you from everything loud, urgent, and unfinished. And there is another kind, the one you found yourself in now, a night that feels like it is opening its arms, welcoming you back from the long journey of your thoughts. The moon outside was low, soft, and swollen with quiet light, painting the floor with gentle silver. It did not rush you, it did not guide you, it simply waited, the way old friends do when they know you needed time to arrive fully. And as you leaned back, letting the night cradle your tired mind, you felt something inside you settle. Not like a decision being made, but like a truth finally being accepted. You had returned, not to a place, not to the jar, not to the quiet room, but to yourself, to the version of you that breathes slowly, listens deeply, and trusts the rhythm of the world more than the pressure inside your head. The night held you with a softness that felt earned, and as you sank deeper into it, you felt no need to hurry, no urge to think ahead. You were home in the simplest way, by being present. The riverbank stretched ahead, dimly lit by a moon that no longer needed to shine brightly to be felt. You walked slowly, as if each step were rediscovering the ground beneath it. There was no urgency in your movement now. The night around you felt like a companion that simply walked at your side, saying nothing, offering everything. A thin mist clung to the path, moving with the gentleness of breath. And in that quiet softness, you realized something simple. The path never asked you to hurry. It had waited for you through every season, every doubt, every restless moment. You were never late. You were simply arriving now, at last, with a quieter heart than before.
As you wandered on, you became aware of a brightness not outside, but within. It wasn't a flame or a glow. It felt more like a steady warmth, a subtle awareness of your own presence finally uncluttered. The world around you dimmed a little, as if making space for this inner lantern to shine. You realized how often you had walked through life believing you needed something external, guidance, direction, approval. But tonight, in a hush of moonlit silence, you saw it clearly. You've always carried your own lantern. You just needed stillness to notice its glow. Its light wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was enough. Quietly, beautifully enough. The path curved gently, bringing you again to the river's edge. This time the water didn't ripple with wind or drift with currents. It simply rested, a perfect mirror, as calm as breath halfway between inhale and exhale. You knelt beside it, not to search for answers, but to feel the peace of a surface untouched. Your reflection looked softer than you remembered, as if washed clean of old heaviness. The river didn't explain anything. It didn't analyze your past or predict your future. It only reflected what silence had revealed, a calmer version of you, one you had never allowed yourself to meet before. As you rose, your foot brushed against a cluster of smooth, round stones beside the river. The night air was cool, but they carried the faint warmth of the day that had passed. You picked one up and rolled it gently between your fingers. Each stone had been shaped over years by water that never rushed, never forced, simply flowed. And there, in that quiet lesson of stone and river, you understood something deeply human. Your own rough edges were not mistakes. They were just moments waiting to be softened with time, patience, and gentle flow. You put the stone back where it was, not as an offering, but as a promise to yourself. Not far ahead was a small wooden bench, half hidden under branches that leaned in like protective hands. You sat down slowly, feeling the wood settle beneath your weight, as if greeting you after a long absence. From this seat, the river, the mist, the moon, everything felt both near and far, like memories that had just begun to fade into peace. You didn't need to thank. You didn't need to solve. You didn't need to prove anything. You were simply sitting in the world, and for the first time in a long while, that was enough. And as you settled into the stillness, you sensed the night changing around you, not growing darker, but becoming deeper, more aware, almost protective in its silence. The night felt like a gentle hand on your shoulder, saying nothing, and yet understanding everything.
The longer you rested on the bench, the more you became aware of something you had overlooked for most of the night: your own breathing. Not forced, not shaped, just the quiet rise and fall that had been carrying you through every moment, even the ones you thought you wouldn't survive. It felt like rediscovering an old friend. Each inhale softened the tightness you didn't know you still held. Each exhale released memories that had lingered long after their purpose was gone. Nothing dramatic happened, but you felt lighter, as if your chest had finally remembered how to move without the weight of old stories. And in that soft rhythm, you realized the night wasn't here to change you, it was here to help you hear yourself again. Above you, the branches swayed with the gentlest motion, brushing against one another with a sound almost too soft to be heard. But something in their quiet dance felt familiar, comforting, as if the world was whispering your name in a language only the heart could understand. It wasn't the words that mattered. It was the feeling, the sense that somehow you belonged to this moment in a way you rarely allowed yourself to feel. The night didn't demand anything from you. It didn't ask you to be strong, or wise, or healed. It only asked you to be here, fully, for just a few breaths. And that was enough for the branches to sway a little softer, as if thanking you for your presence.
As you watched the river, a memory rose. Not sharp, not painful, just a gentle echo from a time when you felt overwhelmed. But tonight, the memory didn't grip you. It didn't tighten your chest. It didn't pull you back into the old version of yourself. Instead, it dissolved the moment you acknowledged it, like a leaf touching the surface of still water, present for a breath, gone the next. You realized how much power the past loses when the present becomes calm enough to hold it without fear. Some memories don't need closure. They just need a quiet space to finally fade. You lifted your gaze, and the moon seemed bigger now, not brighter, just nearer, as if it had been waiting for you to look up. Its light wasn't cold. It wasn't distant. It felt like a soft reassurance that even in darkness, some things remain gentle. You let the moonlight rest on your face. You didn't question it. You didn't analyze it. You just allowed yourself a moment of simple, wordless presence, the kind that doesn't demand understanding because it doesn't demand explanation. And for the first time tonight, you felt the world holding you quietly without asking you to be anything other than tired and human.
When you finally rose from the bench, the path ahead felt different. Not brighter, not clearer, just welcoming. It curved softly through the trees, illuminated by patches of moonlight that slipped between leaves. It felt like an invitation, not to go somewhere, but to keep moving gently, without pressure. You took the first step, and the night accepted it. You took the second, and the mist parted, as if guiding you forward. It wasn't the path that changed. It was the way you walked it, slower, steadier, with a heart that no longer feared what it didn't yet know. And as you moved deeper into the hush of the night, you finally understood. Not every journey begins with a destination. Some begin with a single, quiet step. As you followed the moonlit path, you began to notice a new presence. Not a person, not a sound, but a silence that felt alive. It wasn't empty. It wasn't hollow. It walked beside you with the steadiness of a companion who had no need for words. This silence wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of calm. It softened your footsteps, slowed your breathing, and wrapped the night around you like a warm cloak. You didn't feel watched, judged, or pushed. You felt accompanied, gently, invisibly, like the world had decided to walk with you for a while. And with every slow step, you understood something the noise of life usually hides. Silence isn't loneliness. Silence is guidance delivered in the softest way possible.
A little farther ahead, you saw a lantern hanging from a low branch. Its glow was warm, but strangely steady, without flicker, without flame. It wasn't bright enough to illuminate the forest, just enough to illuminate your next step. You paused beneath it, feeling the faint glow settle around your shoulders. The lantern didn't tell you where to go. It didn't promise answers or direction. It simply marked this moment as important, as if the universe wanted you to notice that every now and then light appears not to guide your journey, but to acknowledge you're already on it. You stood with it for a while, realizing that not all guidance arrives to change your path. Some arrive simply to assure you that you're not lost. You exhaled and continued. As the path grew wider, you whispered a single word, maybe your name, maybe a thought, maybe something you needed to release. The forest returned it to you, but not the way you sent it. It came back softer, rounder, free of the weight you had unknowingly attached to it. You whispered again. The echo returned even gentler. It felt like the forest was smoothing the edges of your voice, polishing the sharpness of your worries before handing them back. In that quiet exchange, you learned something. Sometimes you need to hear your own thoughts softened before you can finally let them go. And so you whispered one last time, not to be heard, but to be released. The echo faded peacefully into the trees. Ahead, a small wooden bridge arched over a stream that glimmered with threads of moonlight. The air grew cooler, the sound of water filling the space your thoughts used to occupy. You stepped onto the bridge slowly, feeling the wood shift gently beneath your weight, not unstable, just alive. Halfway across, you stopped and placed your hands on the railing. The stream below moved quietly, carrying leaves and reflections with equal care. You took a deep breath. The bridge seemed to breathe with you, expanding slightly with each inhale, relaxing with each exhale. It felt as if the entire world had paused, waiting for your lungs to complete their slow cycle. For the first time in a long time, you breathed without rushing. You breathed without fear, and the night rewarded you with stillness. A little farther ahead, you saw a lantern hanging from a low branch. Its glow was warm, but strangely steady, without flicker, without flame. It wasn't bright enough to illuminate the forest, just enough to illuminate your next step. You paused beneath it, feeling the faint glow settle around your shoulders. The lantern didn't tell you where to go. It didn't promise answers or direction. It simply marked this moment as important, as if the universe wanted you to notice that every now and then light appears not to guide your journey, but to acknowledge you're already on it. You stood with it for a while, realizing that not all guidance arrives to change your path. Some arrive simply to assure you that you're not lost. You exhaled and continued. As the path grew wider, you whispered a single word, maybe your name, maybe a thought, maybe something you needed to release. The forest returned it to you, but not the way you sent it. It came back softer, rounder, free of the weight you had unknowingly attached to it. You whispered again. The echo returned even gentler. It felt like the forest was smoothing the edges of your voice, polishing the sharpness of your worries before handing them back. In that quiet exchange, you learned something. Sometimes you need to hear your own thoughts softened before you can finally let them go. And so you whispered one last time, not to be heard, but to be released. The echo faded peacefully into the trees. Ahead, a small wooden bridge arched over a stream that glimmered with threads of moonlight. The air grew cooler, the sound of water filling the space your thoughts used to occupy. You stepped onto the bridge slowly, feeling the wood shift gently beneath your weight, not unstable, just alive. Halfway across, you stopped and placed your hands on the railing. The stream below moved quietly, carrying leaves and reflections with equal care. You took a deep breath. The bridge seemed to breathe with you, expanding slightly with each inhale, relaxing with each exhale. It felt as if the entire world had paused, waiting for your lungs to complete their slow cycle. For the first time in a long time, you breathed without rushing. You breathed without fear, and the night rewarded you with stillness.
On the far side of the bridge lay a single smooth stone, resting in a patch of silver light. You noticed something unusual. No matter how you shifted your angle, the stone cast no shadow. It simply existed, whole, untouched by the direction of the moon. You knelt and picked it up. It felt warm, almost as if it remembered the touch of someone who had held it long ago. There was nothing magical about it, but there was something meaningful. You realized the stone was teaching you a quiet truth. Not everything needs a story. Not everything needs meaning. Some things simply are. You placed the stone back where it belonged, not because it mattered, but because the act of returning it felt peaceful. And then you continued down the path, the night opening softly in front of you. As you walked, a soft breeze brushed against your face, carrying sounds almost like forgotten songs, a melody half remembered, a whisper of laughter, a trace of memories that no longer weighed on you. It wasn't wind in the ordinary sense. It was a messenger of gentle truths. You closed your eyes and let the cool touch glide over your skin, noticing how it stirred a quiet rhythm inside your chest, softening any tension you had carried. The breeze didn't speak. It didn't judge. It simply reminded you that some things are meant to drift by, untethered, and that the mind,
like the wind, is most peaceful when allowed to roam without grasping. You exhaled slowly, letting the songs fade into the night, and realized letting go isn't loss. It's the subtle return of lightness to the heart. Further ahead, small lanterns glowed intermittently along the path, like gentle signals placed by someone who knew the way without needing to guide it. Each lantern cast a small circle of warmth on the ground, soft as the moonlight that filtered through the trees. You walked from one to the next, noticing how the distance between them mirrored the spaces within your own thoughts, pauses, silences, breaths. You realized that life isn't a stream of constant illumination. It's a rhythm of light and shadow, giving space for reflection and rest. Each lantern didn't promise answers. It only encouraged presence, reminding you that moving forward can be gentle, deliberate, and entirely without hurry. And with each step, your body and mind felt lighter, as though the path itself exhaled alongside you. The path eventually led you to a stream, its waters gliding over smooth stones in a murmur so soft it almost went unnoticed. You knelt and let your fingers touch the surface. The water was cool, endlessly patient, flowing without need or expectation. Watching it, you understood how often you tried to force life into speed and structure when most things simply find their own pace. You let the stream carry your attention gently downstream, every ripple a reminder that time is never lost. It only unfolds in its own quiet, inevitable way. You felt a slow unburdening, as if the stream had gathered all the weights you'd been holding and was letting them drift silently away. You didn't retrieve them, you didn't analyze them, you simply watched them vanish, leaving space for calm to expand. A tall tree rose beside the path, its silhouette etched against the faint light of the moon. You stopped and observed it, noting how it stood unwavering, with branches outstretched, leaves barely stirring. It asked nothing of the wind, it demanded nothing of the ground, and yet it thrived. It simply was, deeply rooted, patient, present. You realized how often you sought validation, guidance, or approval for your own presence, when perhaps the most peaceful life is lived without asking. You rested your hand on the tree's bark, feeling the steady heartbeat of life beneath your fingers, and understood that being is enough, always enough. The night wrapped you in that quiet lesson, letting it settle deep inside where words could not reach. As you reached the edge of the forest, the sky stretched above, vast and infinite, stars hidden behind a soft haze of clouds, yet pulsing with quiet certainty. You stopped, breathing in the expansive calm, and for a moment you felt the enormity of it all. The river, the path, the lanterns, the breeze, the stream, the tree, every step, every pause, every quiet observation, held here in the same night. It didn't overwhelm you. It didn't demand comprehension. It simply invited presence. You realize that the night itself is a teacher, carrying everything you experienced gently into the quiet spaces within yourself. And for the first time in this long journey, you let the sky cradle you fully,
without fear, without effort, simply existing alongside it, knowing that every part of the path had led you here, ready to rest, ready to be, ready to drift peacefully into sleep.
As you continued along the moonlit path, you noticed your footsteps, not for their sound, but for the rhythm they created within you. Each step was soft, deliberate, gentle, as if the earth itself had been waiting for you to walk without haste. No destination mattered now. The journey itself was the lesson. You felt the subtle vibration of life beneath your feet, the soil, the fallen leaves, the small stones warmed by the memory of the day. And in that quiet connection, you realized that every step carried only what it needed to: your presence, your awareness, and your stillness. There was no hurry, there was no obligation, just you, the path, and the soft pulse of being alive in the night. Up ahead, faint glimmers appeared between the trees, catching your eye and drawing your attention. They weren't lanterns, nor distant fireflies, just the subtle reflection of moonlight on dew-laden leaves. As you observed, you noticed a whisper within you, a gentle reminder that the world communicates not through noise or spectacle, but through subtle signs, if only you are willing to notice. The glimmer spoke not with language, but with presence. It reminded you that understanding doesn't always come through explanation. Sometimes it comes through observation, through attention, through simply being. You let your gaze linger, and for the first time tonight, felt gratitude for the small, quiet signs that had always guided you, even when you weren't listening. The trees around you seemed to breathe with the night, their leaves moving in soft synchrony, carrying the cool, humid air toward you. You paused and inhaled deeply, noticing how the forest's breath entered your own body, softening tension and loosening the knots of thought that had lingered far too long. It was a gentle reminder that you are not separate from the world around you. You are part of its rhythm, part of its inhalation and exhalation. And as your own breathing slowed to match the forest's, you felt a quiet unification. Your mind, your body, your presence merging seamlessly with the night. Here, in this shared rhythm, there was no past, no future, only this single, perfect, still moment. By the side of the path, a small pool mirrored the moon above. You knelt beside it and watched as the water shimmered faintly, disturbed only by the soft wind. The reflection was not static. It shifted, distorted, and reformed with every ripple. Yet it remained complete. And suddenly, you understood that life, like the reflection, is always moving, changing, and flowing. You didn't need to hold it still. You didn't need to control it. You only needed to observe, to accept the impermanence, and to allow the gentle motion to teach you the art of yielding without losing your own form. In that mirror, the night whispered its wisdom. Peace is found in movement, even when it seems chaotic. As you continued along the moonlit path, you noticed your footsteps, not for their sound, but for the rhythm they created within you. Each step was soft, deliberate, gentle, as if the earth itself had been waiting for you to walk without haste. No destination mattered now. The journey itself was the lesson. You felt the subtle vibration of life beneath your feet, the soil, the fallen leaves, the small stones warmed by the memory of the day. And in that quiet connection, you realized that every step carried only what it needed to: your presence, your awareness, and your stillness. There was no hurry, there was no obligation, just you, the path, and the soft pulse of being alive in the night. Up ahead, faint glimmers appeared between the trees, catching your eye and drawing your attention. They weren't lanterns, nor distant fireflies, just the subtle reflection of moonlight on dew-laden leaves. As you observed, you noticed a whisper within you, a gentle reminder that the world communicates not through noise or spectacle, but through subtle signs, if only you are willing to notice. The glimmer spoke not with language, but with presence. It reminded you that understanding doesn't always come through explanation. Sometimes it comes through observation, through attention, through simply being. You let your gaze linger, and for the first time tonight, felt gratitude for the small, quiet signs that had always guided you, even when you weren't listening. The trees around you seemed to breathe with the night, their leaves moving in soft synchrony, carrying the cool, humid air toward you. You paused and inhaled deeply, noticing how the forest's breath entered your own body, softening tension and loosening the knots of thought that had lingered far too long. It was a gentle reminder that you are not separate from the world around you. You are part of its rhythm, part of its inhalation and exhalation. And as your own breathing slowed to match the forest's, you felt a quiet unification. Your mind, your body, your presence merging seamlessly with the night. Here, in this shared rhythm, there was no past, no future, only this single, perfect, still moment. By the side of the path, a small pool mirrored the moon above. You knelt beside it and watched as the water shimmered faintly, disturbed only by the soft wind. The reflection was not static. It shifted, distorted, and reformed with every ripple. Yet it remained complete. And suddenly, you understood that life, like the reflection, is always moving, changing, and flowing. You didn't need to hold it still. You didn't need to control it. You only needed to observe, to accept the impermanence, and to allow the gentle motion to teach you the art of yielding without losing your own form. In that mirror, the night whispered its wisdom. Peace is found in movement, even when it seems chaotic.
And now, as the final moments of this journey settle around you like a soft blanket of moonlit stillness, let your body grow heavy, and let your thoughts drift like sand returning to rest after a long, patient wind. You have walked far tonight, through silence, through memory, through gentle realizations that asked for no effort, only awareness. Every part of this path has brought you a little closer to yourself, softened the noise inside you,
and reminded you that peace isn't found at the end of the story. It appears in the spaces between each breath, each heartbeat, each tiny moment of noticing. You've listened to the night. You've felt the wind. You've watched the world soften beneath the moon's quiet guidance. And now there is nothing left to do, nothing left to solve, nothing left to carry. Let the weight of the day fall from your shoulders like sand slipping through an open hand. Let your breath lengthen. Let your mind loosen its grip. Let your heart settle into the slow rhythm of night. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. As sleep rises to meet you, gentle, warm, unhurried, allow yourself to sink into it fully. There is no need to stay awake for the ending. The ending already lives inside you. May your rest be deep. May your dreams be soft. May your night be peaceful beyond words. Good night. From Sleepy Zen Story, Moon.